Hi everyone. If you're worried about how much you'll be paying in taxes, especially in retirement, today I'll be discussing an account that is not as well known as some of the other tax-advantaged accounts like the 401k or the Roth, which can save you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the end of this video, you'll know the ins and outs of one of the best legal tax-advantaged accounts out there, including the benefits, which actually includes true tax-free money, the requirements, and please stay to the end for some of the pitfalls to avoid. And if you're looking to apply for Medicare, please watch to the end because there is a big pitfall with this that you do need to be aware of. My name is Carolyn, and I'm an attorney and a real estate broker, and I've been investing for over 20 years, and I would love to share what I've learned to help you fast-track your wealth and financial independence goals. Okay, so what is this great, mystical, tax-advantaged account? You may have heard of it. It's called a health savings account, or HSA. So the beauty of the HSA is that it combines some of the benefits of health savings with some of the other benefits of other tax-advantaged accounts like the 401k and the Roth. Like an IRA or Roth or a 401k, you can use the money within the account. You can invest in a variety of investments, stocks, index funds, just like you would. Of course, some of this is going to depend. If you're using an employer HSA account, then it's going to be what is available within that account. But it is possible to use it as an investment vehicle in the same way you would use a Roth or a 401k. So if used in this particular way, the HSA will actually provide a mechanism for you to not have to pay taxes up front and not have to pay taxes at the end when you withdraw it. Now, before we go further, I have a quick disclaimer. This should not be construed as legal, tax, or financial advice, and everyone's personal circumstance is different. These are simply ideas for you to consider, research, and discuss with qualified tax and financial professional. So the first benefit of an HSA is very similar to a 401k in that you contribute with what is known as pre-tax dollars, which basically is a tax write-off. You get to deduct the amount that you put into the account and deduct it from the amount of income that you claim on your taxes. Now, you should know that there has been a proposal to change the deductibility feature of the 401k. We don't know if that's going to go through, and we also don't know yet whether that would include an HSA. So we'll have to keep our ears open and see what happens. Another benefit of the HSA is that, like the 401k, employers can offer a matching contribution to an HSA. And like the 401k, this is free money. Okay, so this third benefit is where it really gets good. So if you withdraw the funds to use for a qualified medical expense, which we'll get into in a minute, the funds are withdrawn tax-free like a Roth. So you don't pay taxes when you put the money in like a 401k, and then if you use it to pay for a qualified medical expense, then you don't pay taxes when you withdraw it like a Roth. So you get both benefits without the downside, so long as you use it properly. And you can even withdraw it at any time, so long as it's for qualified medical expenses. You don't have to wait to 59 and a half like you have to with the 401k and the Roth for certain withdrawals. And on top of that, you don't even have to withdraw the funds to directly use for your medical expense at the same time. In other words, you can put your money into the account and leave it there to grow tax-free, and then pay for your medical expenses out of pocket, and then reimburse yourself for those expenses in a different year. And still, you can pull that money out tax-free and then use it for anything you want, so long as you're reimbursing yourself for an actual qualified medical expense. So let's say you have a doctor visit that it costs $100, and you have put the $100 into the account. And let's say it has grown over time to $300. You can, as long as you keep very good records, and it's very important that you keep very good records, you can withdraw the $100 tax-free down the road, years later, and use that money to buy groceries or whatever, so long as it corresponds with an actual qualified medical expense that you paid for. So I should note, this rolls over year to year, which is very different from some other health savings accounts. It's very important. I'm not talking about an FSA here. I'm talking about an HSA. so here's another example of how to maximize this type of account. Let's say you earn $50,000 in income, and the following year you have a medical bill of $1,000. If the money has just been sitting in a savings account, that $1,000 medical bill will actually cost you about $1,220 because you will have had to pay taxes in order to make that $1,000 sort of after tax. If instead you were to have put that $1,000 into a health savings account and invested it in say a stock index fund, and let's say it grew 10%, then the $1,000 will have grown in that year to $1,100. So you get the tax deduction for putting the money into the account, so that prior year, instead of showing that you earned $50,000, you will have shown that you earned $49,000, so there will be some tax savings there. And the money in the fund has grown to $1,100. So you're not only saving the $220 that you would have paid in tax, you're also having the $100 that you earned from the investment, and that grows tax-free. But this is where it's even better. That's good, but then it gets even better if you were to put the $1,000 into the account, into the HSA, and the following year you have the $1,000 medical bill, but instead of withdrawing the funds, you pay for it out of pocket and you leave the money to grow in the account. Then, let's say you leave it there for 10 years, again at 10%, your money has now grown to a little over $2,500, almost $2,600. So in this scenario, even after paying the $1,000 medical bill, there would still be $1,593 left in the HSA account to continue to grow. This represents a $1,813 savings as opposed to just paying the medical bill out of a regular savings account, because there are also tax savings. So over time, this is just at the 10-year mark, this would continue to grow. Okay, so you may be wondering, what about if I don't have a lot of medical expenses? What if I just don't get sick very often? Number one, you may not have health issues now, but down the road, as you get closer to retirement, you may find that you do have some health issues. Number two, it can act as an extra safety valve in case of emergencies, unforeseen illness, accidents, things like that. And number three, there is also a way for you to withdraw the funds from the account and not use them for medical expenses, but it's not as favorable as if you do use it for qualified medical expenses. And the way that would work is you can withdraw the funds and they would act as a 401k, meaning you would pay taxes but not a penalty on the withdrawal. But the age is a lot higher. You have to wait until 65, whereas with the 401k, you'd have to wait until 59 and a half. So if you get to that point and you're still in great health and you want to tap the money, you can do it without a penalty, but again, you have to wait till 65. Another point is that what is considered a qualified medical expense is pretty broad and is actually growing over time. So things that maybe aren't covered now may in the future, we don't know, but may in the future be covered. But here are a few things that are covered that tend to be fairly routine for most of us. In addition to things that you would expect, like, for example, your annual physical, medical tests, and co-pays and deductibles and things like that, there are other things that you may not have considered that would be included. For example, some medical insurance premiums, breast pumps and supplies, chiropractor and acupuncture visits, vision tests, contact lenses, glasses, dental treatments, fertility treatments, a pregnancy test. So there are a lot of things in there that would be covered that are just part of our regular personal maintenance that would be covered. Additionally, medical expenses for a nursing home, nursing services, and certain long-term care expenses and long-term care insurance contracts are also considered qualified medical expenses. And as I mentioned, this list tends to change and expand sometimes. So for 2021, and I believe also 2020, the CARES Act expanded and made it permanent to include over-the-counter medications and things like feminine products. And so this would also include, for example, cold and flu medication, pain relievers, allergy and sinus medication, digestive aids, baby rash ointments and creams, baby electrolytes, sleep aids, acid controllers, acne medications. It has significantly increased what is covered. And I would again remind you just to please always double check on this list to make sure that it is a covered expense. My last point is that medical expenses are expected to rise, and quite a bit, and this is due in part to inflation. One of the things that people don't really talk about very often is the fact that inflation is not uniform. It can vary according to different sectors. And so, for example, over here you can see this is a 10-year period, and you can see that some sectors, they can literally go up and down at the same time. The clothing sector, there has been no inflation. In fact, the price has gone down over 10 years, and so there's been deflation there. And with medical care, it has gone up quite a bit, especially compared with apparel, and especially considering this has been a fairly low inflation period. And when the Fed looks at inflation, what they're doing is looking at a basket of sectors taken together. But you can see that medical care is a standout here when it comes to inflation, and that's why, or one of the reasons why, you can see medical costs rising fairly rapidly. You can also see in this table here that inflation is higher for medical care than it is for some of the other sectors, and when taken over a 10-year period, you can really see what a difference that makes. So this is why the HSA can be really important, because if you expect inflation to rise, then likely that means the medical costs are going to rise as well, and this may actually grow exponentially. So the HSA provides a tool where you can actually hedge against that inflation, because rather than just keeping it in a savings account, number one, you get the savings, the tax savings that I mentioned, but number two, you can actually hedge against the inflation by investing that money to help you to cover those medical expenses down the road. So getting into the requirements for an HSA, the first is you have to have a high deductible health insurance plan where you typically have to pay a few $1,000s up front, and then the health insurance kicks in after that. For 2021, the minimum deductible is $1,400 for an individual and $2,800 for a family. Remember to check these, as they will likely change from year to year. In exchange, the monthly premium for these plans is usually quite a bit lower. You should check with your employer to see if they offer these high deductible health plans. Typically, if an employer offers an HSA program, they usually have a high deductible health plan to go with it. The other requirement for an HSA is, like the Roth and the 401k, there are contribution limits, and for 2021 the contribution limit for an individual is $3,600, and for a family plan it is $7,200, but this is for 2021. Remember to check these, as they will likely change. And lastly, the pitfalls, and there are some that you definitely do need to be aware of. The first is you have to be very careful about overcontribution. There are steep penalties if you contribute more than you are allowed to. The next pitfall is you have to make sure that it is a qualified medical expense, because if it is not, the penalty is steep. It's a lot steeper than for a 401k or a Roth. It's 20% plus your income tax on top of that. And so it's definitely important that you make sure that it is a qualified medical expense. Now, again, like I said earlier, this doesn't apply if you're 65 or older. Then it becomes you don't have the penalty, but you do pay the tax like a 401k. This penalty doesn't apply if you become medically designated as disabled. The next pitfall has to do with planning to leave funds for your heirs. If you leave the HSA to your spouse, then there's no issue. It continues to operate as an HSA, and there's no problem. However, if you are giving or leaving the HSA to anyone other than your spouse, it loses its HSA designation, and the entire fair market value of the funds in the HSA will be essentially taxable as income to the beneficiary. So in other words, if you leave your HSA to your children as the beneficiary, they will inherit that as a lump sum, which is fully taxable. So it's going to be on top of whatever income they earn. As compared to something like a Roth, for example, where you can leave that to your children and it doesn't immediately lose its Roth tax protected status, the HSA does when it comes to anyone other than your spouse. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you shouldn't have an HSA. It just means that you need to be careful about strategizing for your drawdown from your accounts. So if you have both a Roth and an HSA, you may want to prioritize drawing down from the HSA, applying it to medical expenses, to qualified medical expenses, so it retains the tax-free status when you withdraw it. But the point is to just keep that in mind as part of your strategy for drawing down from these funds. And the last pitfall, which I referred to earlier, is a big one. Once you are entitled to receive Medicare coverage, you can no longer contribute to an HSA. So it gets a little bit complicated, so it's really advisable, because there is a retroactive part of this requirement. It's advisable at a minimum to stop contributing to an HSA at least 6 months before you are going to seek Medicare coverage. I should note that whatever you have already contributed is still available to you. The only thing is you can't really contribute from that point on, but whatever's already in the account is obviously you can use it. And again, there's that 65 and over provision where you can even take it out for non-qualified medical expenses. So I would love to hear from you all to see how many of you have heard of an HSA and how many of you are actually using an HSA, and also how many of you have an HSA available through your employer. It would really be a great idea to just, if nothing else, check with your employer and see if this is available through them. So those are the ins and outs of the HSA. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. I would also love it if you would consider joining the community and subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, I would really be happy to see those below. And I hope you are all doing well, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.